Most AI outreach systems have the same problem. They depend entirely on expensive APIs, generic automation tools, and mass sending workflows that create low quality output and unpredictable results. I kept running into the same issues: bad lead quality, hallucinated AI responses, messy scraped data, and cold emails that sounded obviously machine generated. So instead of stacking more SaaS tools together, I rebuilt the entire workflow locally. I created a fully local AI system that finds high-value business leads, analyzes their websites, extracts real buying signals using a local LLM, and scores opportunities automatically. And of course, generates personalized cold emails I can actually send with confidence. No external APIs, no per request costs, no mass spam automation. Everything runs directly on my own machine. And in this video, I'm breaking down exactly how the full architecture works, from scraping and data cleaning to local AI decision engines and automated cold outreach generation. The first problem I ran into was lead quality. Most people scrape thousands of businesses and hope volume solves the problem. It doesn't, and you just end up wasting tokens, processing garbage data, and sending terrible outreach. So instead of chasing quantity, I narrowed the target completely. I picked one high-ticket niche: foundation repair companies in my local area. Then I used Outscraper to pull a focus data set of around 100 businesses. That changed everything. Because once the input data became smaller and cleaner, the rest of the system became dramatically more accurate. The next issue was duplicated and bloated data. Scraped data sets are messy and you'll get repeated businesses, inconsistent naming, unnecessary metadata, and junk fields that only slow the AI down. So I built a cleaning layer immediately after ingestion. I normalized businesses using Google Place ID values and stripped away everything except the essentials: business name, website, reviews, and contact details. That one step massively reduced processing overhead. Clean data made the local LLM faster, cheaper, and significantly more reliable. Another problem was figuring out which businesses were actually worth contacting, because not every company is a good opportunity. Some businesses are too small to afford services, some are already heavily optimized, and others are completely inactive. So I created a filtering and tiering system. I specifically target businesses with roughly 10 to 500 reviews. That middle range turned out to be the sweet spot. They're active, they generate revenue, but many still have weak digital systems. Then I classified every lead into tier A, B, or C. That way, the system already knew which businesses deserved immediate attention before outreach even started. The next problem was scraping useful information instead of random website text. Most scrapers behave like dumb bots. They just grab everything. But most website pages are useless for sales intelligence. So I redesigned the scraper to behave more like a researcher. It prioritizes high-value pages first: service pages, financing pages, about pages, and contact pages. Then I use a traffilatura to extract only clean, readable content instead of messy HTML. I also added browser-like headers and intentional delays to reduce blocking. The goal wasn't to scrape more data, the goal was to scrape the right data. The next challenge was cost. Most AI workflows become expensive very quickly because every request depends on external APIs. That completely breaks scalability for experimentation. So I moved everything locally. I tested multiple models and eventually landed on Llama 3.18b. That setup gave me a strong balance between speed, quality, and reliability. Now, the system could analyze leads continuously without API costs stacking up in the background. And because it runs locally, I also gain much more control over the pipeline itself. Then I ran into one of the most annoying AI engineering problems. LLMs love to talk, I would just ask for pure JSON output and the model would randomly respond with things like, here is the JSON you requested. That tiny sentence was enough to completely break Python parsing, so instead of endlessly fighting the prompt, I solved it with the software engineering. I added a regex extraction layer using Python's library, and the system forcefully extracts only the JSON payload and ignores everything else. That single fix made the entire pipeline dramatically more stable. Another huge problem with scraping system is silent failure. Most pipelines simply discard broken leads, 404 errors disappear, timeouts disappear, AI failures disappear, and that means lost opportunities. So I built what I call a zero-drop architecture. Every single lead is preserved, even failures. If a site returns a 404, it gets tagged as a broken site opportunity. If the AI fails, it gets logged for manual review. Nothing disappears, and that completely changed how I viewed bad data. Failures stop being errors, they become additional sales angles. At this point, the system could extract structured intelligence, but another problem appeared. Generic AI content doesn't convert. Businesses don't care about content generation, they care about more calls, more visibility, and more leads. So I transformed the pipeline into a strategy engine. Instead of generating one generic message, the system generates different strategic angles depending on the extracted signals. For example, if the company offers financing or strong warranties, the system creates a positioning angle focused on trust and authority. If the business operates in an environment with seasonal structural risks, it generates urgency-based messaging. Each strategy then produces SEO articles, Google business posts, Facebook posts, and email outreach. Everything becomes campaign-ready automatically. The next major issue was authenticity. AI-generated copy usually sounds painfully generic. It uses predictable sentence rhythms, overused marketing phrases, and vague language. So I built constraints directly into the pipeline. I injected local references, real environmental conditions, neighborhood names, and highly specific scenarios. I also removed the cliché phrases automatically. Then I forced more natural sentence variations so the writing sounded more human, unlike me talking right now. The goal wasn't just to avoid AI detectors, the goal was to make the output feel believable, because believable language creates trust, and trust is what actually converts. The final major problem was hallucination. Originally, the AI handled everything: reasoning, problem detection, and writing, and that created inconsistent logic and fake observations. So I separated truth from language. Python became the truth layer, the AI became the language layer. So Python handles facts like site failed, no financing page, outdated content, missing SEO structure, and then the LLM simply converts verified facts into natural language. That single architectural decision made the entire system dramatically more predictable. Every mail now follows a strict structure: problem, consequence, offer, and soft CTA. No fluff, no hallucinations, no fake personalization. Just evidence-backed outreach. Once all those problems were solved, the system naturally evolved into a layered architecture. First, raw business leads enter the pipeline. Then the scraper extracts structured website intelligence, and after that the local LLM analyzes the data and generates structured outputs. Then a scoring and decision layer prioritize opportunities. And finally, the outreach layer generates personalized campaigns. What I realized during this process is that AI itself is not the real advantage. The advantage comes from structured data and controlled reasoning. Once the structure is reliable, AI becomes dramatically more predictable. The goal was never to build the smartest AI system, the real goal was much simpler. I wanted to reach a point where I could trust the output enough to actually use it. And while the system works, there are still some bottlenecks. Right now the processing is synchronous, some websites still block scraping, and the workflow still requires manual execution. So the next version focuses on solving those problems. I'm currently working on async processing for parallel scraping, playwright integration for dynamic websites, and full pipeline automation. The next phase is a real-world deployment and testing, not just testing whether the AI writes good text, testing whether the system actually identifies opportunities accurately and generates real responses from businesses. What started as a lead scraping experiment slowly turned into something very different, a structured decision engine. And honestly, I think that's where AI becomes truly powerful. Not when it generates more content, but when it helps reduce uncertainty and improves decision quality. Because the real advantage in the next few years won't come from simply using AI, it will come from structuring data well enough that AI becomes predictable. And that's the direction I'm building toward. If you want to see more breakdowns around local LLMs, AI pipelines, outreach systems, and business automation, feel free to subscribe and follow along. I'll be documenting the next iteration as this system moves from internal testing into the real-world deployment.